Okay, so just a brief overview of what this petition is saying. It is not stating that we object to the signing off of APSA and APSA as a whole. It's just saying that we feel that community involvement in it has been lacking, and that over the past 2 years of that 2+ years that this committee has been working on this proposal, that although we seriously appreciate their work of meeting once a week and talking about this, we feel that the 3 forums that have been opened up to students is not enough, especially when that has not been highlighted to students and reached out to students in a way, in an efficient manner to get their attention. So what we are proposing in this petition is that we push back the date that we can express our concerns, which is currently October 4th. That only leaves a 2-week space for expressing concerns for students, faculty, alumni, anyone that's a part of the Guilford community, to read the report that is actually only accessible to students. Read the 116-page report, gather information about it, kind of collect their thoughts, and then express concerns. We want to extend that so we have time to not just express why we feel this way or what we feel shouldn't be cut, but also alternatives, what we feel we would be okay with cutting maybe, or all just different proposals that we can suggest to them. Because right now with this week and a half left, we don't have much time for creating a structure and creating an organized and actually work being proposal. We want to say it that way. Because we are all full-time students, or at least most of us are full-time students. We have faculty members, there's alumni, people that have other commitments outside of just wanting to be active for the sake of being active. We all are active for the sake of expressing our voices and our concerns that we feel have not been valued strongly enough in this report.
And in going to this forum, we hope to gain a fuller understanding of what the document means. And in this petition, we've asked if this forum is not enough, that they consider continued forums for questions, concerns, and other such things.
Also, we want to just highlight that we are in no way a force against APSA or the committee. They are not bad guys, we are not good guys, we are not bad guys, they are not good guys. We are just a community of people that want to express our concerns to this administration. And we have to acknowledge that they have put years of work into this, and that they have put serious thought into this, and have collected data and have talked to people. We just want to express that we feel they have not talked to all of the people, that they have not gotten all the data, that there are more than quantitative figures that can go into restructuring a community.
So we hope everyone feels empowered to speak up at the forum, to ask any questions you have, to bring up any concerns. And maybe after the forum, there will be more concerns that we have. Perhaps concerns will be relieved. But we're just going to have to see how it goes and see how we feel afterwards. And we can keep meeting. We can keep working on this. But let's stay strong and unified and energetic. This energy is really amazing, and we're so glad everyone has put a lot of time into trying to find out as much information as possible and taking time out of their day to come here.
Something I just want to express to everyone is not to go in there solely with the purpose of just expressing your thoughts, but also receiving their thoughts. That as a Quaker institution and the point of reaching consensus, we have to hear them and be willing. They have agreed through their committee to be willing to step aside personally. So we also have to take the same agreements, to be open-minded, to be willing to put our maybe personal concerns aside to hear someone else. So we should make sure we go in there with open ears as well as just an intent to advocate our beliefs.
Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. I need to say right out of the gate that I have not been part of the group of people that put together this report, so I have no position. I have been asked to facilitate this conversation, and I am happy to do so. Before we go over some ground rules and some just normal rules of protocol for a meeting run according to Quaker business procedure, I'm going to ask that we take a moment here to drop into silence. There are a lot of feelings and passions in the room, so if we can center ourselves, we can have a very positive and productive conversation. Thank you. So, to begin, let's just clarify for each other that we are here in the spirit of truth-seeking and understanding. This panel actually wants your feedback. In order to get the community's feedback, we need to hear from as many people as possible. So what that will mean is I would ask that you keep your comments focused and brief, that until we have heard from as many people in the room as possible, that when you stand to make a comment, you make a single comment, trusting that the truth, as the truth moves through the room, that someone will pick up your other comments. I ask you also to use liberally, friends speak to my mind, when you hear something with which you agree. If you have a question, it should be addressed to the clerk, not to the panel, because this is a conversation of us as a community, not between individuals. It should be a short and focused comment. We will try and do this within an hour, but if it takes longer, we will take longer. So I will turn this over first to President Shabatar, and then the panel, and then we will have our conversation.
I mean this really sincerely. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for showing the passion and interest in what is an administrative study of the programs and services this college offers. It is a testimony to your concern for this college that you are concerned. So thank you for coming. My job is not to talk about the report itself, but to talk about process a little bit. How we came to do this report, why I think it's important to keep an open mind, and what the next steps are. And then, as Jack said, we'll turn it over to a general community discussion, and I will be brief. So how did this start? This started about 2 years ago. I'm a consultant when I'm not a president, and I'm used to helping schools think through really serious problems in terms of budget, in terms of strategy, in terms of finance. And the idea that we were not going to do it in a very uncertain higher environment, when colleges are closing, when colleges are increasingly cutting services, that we didn't take a look at our administrative services seemed to be not a good idea. Number two, it was also fair. We had just finished an academic program prioritization about our core business. Very controversial. Why should we hold the academic side up to the light and not the administrative services? And so it seemed right and fair to do that side as well. And lastly, part of this was changed right when we started, when the state, in its infinite wisdom, cut $2.5 million from our state aid. And so what was always about to be efficiency and productivity and comments in terms of improvement also took on a little bit of a financial context as well, as we wrestled with, we don't want to make cuts across the board, we want to make cuts as selectively as we possibly can. And APSA was appointed before that ground rule got changed. And again, look to Raleigh why it did. Let me talk a little bit about the need for an open mind and think about the possibility that you, me, everybody, that we might be mistaken. This is still a work in progress. This is why it's called a draft. This is not finished. I know APSA wishes it were finished. I think they wished it was finished 6 months or a year ago. But it's a draft. Part of the conversation of this process is the draft was distributed. Part of the conversation is this meeting. Part of the conversation is sending in your comments. And it's all about getting it right at the end. So the extent to which you get involved makes it more possible that we will, in fact, get it right. APSA is independent. I may have appointed it, but it is independent of me. I have not insisted on anything in that report. I've not taken one thing out. I've not added anything. I'll talk more about that in a second. Regardless of what you may think about some of the conclusions, this group has worked very hard on a very thankless task of making tough decisions. Change is always going to be hard. I remember how difficult it was in 2002 to convince some folks in the college that we were rudderless, broke, and dilapidated. But we came around and we did it. Russell Long used to be a senator from Louisiana. He said when there's budget cuts, nobody wants to take a cut. It's always cut the other person. He said, don't cut me, cut the man behind the tree. But not all changes, though, are good changes. Not all cuts are the right cuts. And that's one of the reasons why this conversation is so important. Now, I've had a chance to review 3 prior drafts of APSA. I've made probably scores and scores of comments, some of which have made it into the report, many of which have not. I have disagreements with some of the recommendations in the APSA report. The APSA committee knows that. But I've also told them I'm keeping an open mind. I want to hear from them with whatever additional data or logic they have. I want to hear from the community, what the community thinks. At the end of this, I may be convinced one way or the other, but I'm keeping an open mind, pending for additional information, pending additional inspiration, and I hope, I pray that everyone here does the same. Now, last thing I'll talk about. If you want to be effective in the process, either with APSA at the first thing or with me, here's some just suggestions. I know there's lots of passion around this. I think that's wonderful. But try to balance the passion with logic, balance the passion with being as realistic as possible as to what you really think and being very straightforward. Ditch the drama. My PhD is in public administration, not theater arts. To the extent to which you can really be focused on what really bothers you and get rid of the other stuff, to the extent to which you're going to be more effective. Read the draft. I've seen some emails which clearly folks have not read the entire draft. And that's important. It may make you even more concerned, by the way, when you read the full thing, but I'd ask you to read the full draft. Get your facts straight. Would the students in the audience please raise your hand? Excellent. Core values. Can anybody tell me when they were developed? 1837, 1865, anybody? Any student? When? McGill, the 7 core values which have been quoted over and over again the last couple of days. Anybody know? 2004. There were no core values here, at least not official core values, in 2004 when this community came together. And that's important to know. They're based on the Quaker testimonies. They're based on the history of this college. And so making sure that when you make an assertion, you get it right, and I have the same problem, I got to make sure I get it right, is important. In terms of the core values, it's clear that changing one program or service is going to affect the core values. But each core value is in fact supported by many, many, many programs and services. So to make the assertion that if we change program X, that ruins excellence, or if we change program Y, that ruins community, really doesn't hold up unless you can prove that that is really a cause and effect relationship. Please disagree with civility. Please criticize the recommendation. I've done that. But don't impugn the integrity of the recommenders. And by the way, the same rule applies to the APSA committee with respect to its critics. Back up your comments with examples. Back up your comments with logic. Back up your comments with data. arguments with authority. If you happen to be an expert in a particular area that is mentioned, please rely on that authority, that wisdom. We need that. Some of these things will also apply to deficiencies that I saw in the APSA report. If you have a concern, and if you know about alternatives, provide them. Really, really important, not just to complain, but if you say, hey, I think I share your goal, but I wouldn't do it that way, I'd do it this way, give the APSA the benefit of that wisdom. Don't waste time on petitions. Don't waste time on end runs to the trustees. They trust us as a community to make these decisions. Spend your time making the arguments that will make a difference and address the concerns that you have. There's no hurry, by the way, to make decisions. I've seen an email that said by October 4th, APSA feedback is needed. That's correct. Sometime around fall break, I'll get the report. It's going to be a very complicated process for me to go through. Don't expect any instant turnaround. I'm going to go through every possible comment. I'm going to be talking to folks. I'm going to be reflecting. So you'll be fall break, you'll come back, and there'll be no APSA final recommendations. And remember, it's a little bit awkward. There are some things that are going to be done pretty immediately. There are some things that are never going to get done because I simply think they're not going to work. There are some things that I will pass on to my successor because I have 8 months and a few days. And there are some things that I'm going to make a recommendation on, some things I'm not. But it's very important that I hear from you in order for us to make, as a community, the best possible decision. Remember, we do this with the budget. We've done this with the campus master plan. We do this with the instructional technology plan, our diversity plan. We as a community think best when we think together. Again, thank you for your concern and interest. I look forward to continuing discussions. I'm keeping an open mind. Most colleges would not have the guts to raise such fundamental issues as were raised with the academic program prioritization and with the administrative program and services assessment. Guilford College does have guts, and you should be proud of that. Ken Frumbles, please.
Welcome, everybody.
Start off first by introducing our panel here, the APSA team. We have at the end of the table Tom Colombo representing athletics, Tracy Feranchik representing student affairs, Christina Atkins from the advancement area. We have Gordon Savage from finance, Brian Brindley, our faculty representative, John Barnell from administration, my colleague Aaron Bell from academic affairs, and I'm from academic affairs as well, so 2 of us. In addition, we had a student representative the entire time until he graduated last May, Caleb Whited-Ford, and we also had 1 other staff member from Human Resources representing the President's area, Fred Devine, and who retired in February. So this is our team. We got a charge. Let me add one other thing. None of us volunteered to be on this committee. But we represent a cross-section of the campus. First of all, our committee charge, why were we formed? You've heard the president make reference to this. It was for greater accountability. It's for assessment purposes, which is my area. Assessment means continuous improvement. How can we do things better? We already know what we do, but how can we be more efficient and how can we do better? So that's what our original focus was. A few months into the process, the state of North Carolina decided to change their regulations for awarding state aid to students in private schools. And so all of a sudden, Guilford was in a $2.5 million shortfall. So the president came back and said, oh, by the way, you may need to make a few adjustments. We need to cut 10% from our budget. That wasn't a part of the original plan. So that sort of changed things, and it changed our way of thinking.
My name is Erin Dell. I work in the Dean's Office, and I'm going to touch briefly on APSA's guiding principles and also our decision-making norms. I'll start with the guiding principles that actually were on the wall in every meeting that we had, serving as the framework of our work. To be transparent, that the study criteria, process, and timetable will be collaboratively developed, approved, and well publicized in advance of our study. On the Guilford Net, all of the APSA materials are there. Comprehensive, study criteria will be broad in scope so as to encompass all aspects of all administrative areas. Consistent, the same study criteria will be applied to each administrative area. Inclusive, all college programs will be analyzed and all college employees will have the opportunity to participate in the development of their administrative area reports. And data-driven. While retaining our value of community, we must also embrace the culture of evidence, one that ensures that administrative area decisions now and in the future will be based upon both quantitative and qualitative data. Once established, the database may be updated and used as a management tool going forward for assessment, future accreditation exercises. I'm not going to go through, I'm going to highlight some of our decision-making norms. They're on 3 slides upcoming, and this will be posted on the APSA website as well, but I wanted to highlight a couple of them. We actually adopted most of our norms by consensus, but we took from Arthur Larrabee, who many of you may know is a Quaker, a lady friend from Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. He's a clerking expert, and a couple of years ago came to talk to the faculty about the role of committees and gave some decision-making norms, ground rules really for committees as they do their work. So any of you that saw that, you'll see it repeated. We adopted a lot of those. In particular, thinking of Guilford as another person in the room or an entity in the room with us while we were meeting and deliberating. That anyone in the group had the permission to sense the group, not just the co-chairs, John and Greg, but that anyone would have permission to come forward and sense where the group was at any given time. And also demonstrating respect for everyone in the meeting, even though we might not necessarily have agreed and actually oftentimes disagreed quite vehemently.
Comments focused and brief. Given the passions in the room, I'm sure there are many who would like to make multiple comments. We'd like to cycle this through the room as much as we can. So, for that, let's start with a moment of silence, and out of that silence, as people feel the Spirit, the need to speak, as the Spirit moves you, please come down from.
Max Carter, Director of Kronisch Center, and in reading the recommendations in my particular area, just wanted to lift up some particular data that I hope might be taken into consideration. One, the position that was recommended to be eliminated is funded by Kronisch Center's own fundraising, and would probably be budget neutral for the college, given that we raised those funds. Those funds are largely raised through our activities, not only on campus, but out off campus. Our work in work trips and our Quaker Renewal program have made connections that have tripled our annual fund over the last 20 years and have brought in, just in the last 5 years, over $2 million in gifts to the college because of those connections. So I would lift up that data for your consideration. The third thing I would say is the comparison of our staffing in Kronisch Center to campus ministry programs at 10 other colleges is probably comparing apples to oranges, because we do more than campus ministry. We do academic work, we coordinate the Quaker Studies program, we coordinate the Quaker Leadership Scholars program, as well as campus ministry. And so two of those positions are actually part-time. So I would hope you would recalculate those as well.
Sorry, I'm short. I'm Maria Rosales, Political Science. And I first want to say thank you so much. I know this was very, very hard work, and I would not have wanted to be on the committee. And there's some things that I really appreciate. I appreciate the focus on collaboration. Some of the ideas about restructuring, like the Student Success Center, seem like very good ideas to me. this whole conversation is taking place with what appears from my position as a faculty member to be a very serious lack of transparency about the overall budget. We get very big categories, but it's very hard to tell what we're spending money on, and this is particularly troubling to me, given that we spend so little money on staff and faculty compared to our peers, who have similar size endowments, similar size debt, etc. But most of the recommendations seem to be about cutting staff, even though already we know people who work at Guilford College are overworked. And so I just think there are probably things we could cut besides staff that would make more sense, but I don't know what they are because I don't know what we're spending money on that our peers are not spending money on. Thank you.
Rita Sorokin from the Center for Continuing Education, and I would like to say that Russell Long was right. And if you read and make a chart of which areas are benefiting, it's extremely eye-opening. I would like to say there's a lot of misinformation about the Center for Continuing Education in that report that did not come from what CCE submitted. We submitted 16 pages of data and detailed information. CCE students are not ruining the excellence. We are not failing to provide excellence to both traditional and CCE students because of CCE. CCE students do just as well academically as traditional students. In fact, more CCE students go on to graduate school than traditional students. And the graduation rates are the same or very similar. And CCE students, as well as traditional students, the graduation survey, 92 and 93% are satisfied, and all of them cite the transformational experience, small classes, the faculty relationships, the sense of community. There is, in this report, some of these recommendations. CCE students are not just in 4 departments. And if those 4 departments and CCE are spun off, and I'd like to see the data to prove that we would benefit from that, because I do not agree. The trend in higher ed is for the adult student to become the norm, and we cannot turn our back on them. And so, if in fact we spin off and separate CCE, then I would ask all the faculty and the students to know and to think about what will happen to the faculty and the staff of this college and the number it can support when 1,000 students are separated out. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Daniel Rader. I guess my area of expertise is that I'm a student. And Ken mentioned the drama, and something I saw up there was data-centered. Something I didn't see up there was student-centered. I think at this institution, maybe at other institutions, this is what I know, is the focus on students, empowering students, enriching students. And I think you see how many students are here today. We didn't come out because we wanted to sit here. We came out because there's something personally that was upsetting us. And before I go forward, I would like to thank you again and affirm all the work that you've done. But the October 4th deadline, I met with about 20 students last night who came out on their own, met after evening classes. We were there until midnight, 2 o'clock last night, talking about what that October 4th deadline means to us. How are we as students, full-time students, supposed to take a 115-page document in 2 weeks and organize our own personal thoughts, connect with our faculty, connect with our staff, have a community dialogue about what this means, and have 2 weeks to respond to it. I think was, out of those 20 students last night, the pretty distilled message is that we're feeling somewhat shut out. We don't believe intentionally at all, but we're feeling shut out from this. And I hope you'll take that into consideration, that there's the data-driven, but where's the student-driven aspect of this, and we hope you will take that into consideration.
Hi, my name is Eric Mortensen. I teach in the Religious Studies Department here. I have a question for the panel, or for the clerk, regarding the art gallery and the position of the curatorship of the art gallery. In your report, top of my head, but I remember the line well. There's a description that the art gallery provides minimal contribution to student academics, and that is part of the assessment of the art gallery. Given that you are data-driven in your assessment, and given that the report given to your committee detailed from the curatorship did detail academic programming associated with the art gallery, and given that I personally attended a lot of those programming things and witnessed huge turnout, great student learning, great student engagement with the art gallery. The art gallery I often see very full of students. There's a lot of people I know who don't attend these things. But I'm wondering, therefore, how you came to conclude that it has minimal impact on student learning. Thank you. Someone from the panel? Someone from the panel like to respond? I mean, I can call him sometime.
I think one of the things that we said prior to coming to the meeting was there's nobody in this panel here in this group that can speak for the committee in terms of responding to. The only thing we can do is help clarify and restate. So we only noted one thing so far that I could have corrected based on the data that's in the report that was stated that was not factual, not correct reading of the report. And of course, we can all read things differently, so that's understandable. And in this case, if somebody has other, this kind of data, we welcome to hear that data and to be able to have that at our disposal. We certainly obviously didn't find that data, or else we would have said differently in our report.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Rinker, Peace and Conflict Studies and co-director of the Conflict Resolution Resource Center. And I just wanted to raise a couple of points. I want to say thank you guys very much, first off, and the idea of trusting the process as an expert in peace and conflict studies. My professors, as I studied that, oftentimes would say, trust the process. So I want to hold that up in the light and say, yes, we need to trust the process. Having said that, I'm very confused by the recommendation to eliminate the Conflict Resolution Resource Center and the ombudsperson. It implies an assumption that there's no conflict on campus, which as somebody who studies conflict and works in the field finds laughable. I just want to highlight one point in particular, that elimination in the report, the categories for the criterion for elimination are limited demand, limited future opportunity, and minimal connection to the Guilford mission. And I think in the case of both those programs, they actually satisfy all of those in spades. And so I'm very confused by the categorization of that, and I respect the idea of data-driven. I think that's crucial and important. I also heard qualitative and quantitative data-driven approaches.
As we were discussing at the beginning, I think Ken brought that up, and I get the impression from reading the report that it's very much quantitative and not qualitative. And so I'm encouraging my students from the CRC to actually, respond to the APSA report and tell about some of the great experiences that CRC, and I'm happy to share those with the panel. If anybody wants to contact me, that's great. So that's what I have to say.
I wanted to say something about the CRRC. From what is written in the report, the elimination piece of it is really eliminating it as an administrative function, as administrative budget. That the budget doesn't get cut, but that it rolls into the Peace and Conflict Studies department being administered there. So not saying that it is not valuable and eliminated away, but that it would come up under an academic department.
And I appreciate that. And then there's also a discussion of repurposing space, which was unclear to me. So the way the report's written, I'm very confused.
Okay, thank you.
The Department of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, occasionally in African American Studies, and I also work as a facilitator in the Understanding Racism workshops on campus. I have several concerns with the report, and I do trust in the process that most of these things will come out with time.
that most of my concerns will come out over time. These are very folksy surroundings. It's easy to gather your thoughts under these circumstances. One thing that I think about in terms of the art gallery and the Bonner Center, which I can't even get started on, is the amount of goodwill and connection to the Greensboro community that is created through the art gallery and the Bonner Center and the scholars that we send out. And I don't see evidence in the report that that kind of connection has been taken into account. Nor am I sure how you would quantify or even qualify that kind of goodwill. But I encourage you to find someone who knows how to do that. Most particularly, I'm concerned about the idea of transferring multicultural education and Bonner to the student affairs side. And I think one tremendous thing that this report doesn't state explicitly is that one of the things that makes Guilford different in our anti-racist and social justice mission is that it is meant to be integrated throughout the curriculum and throughout the entire experience of the college. The diversity plan specifically sets up a plan for us to further integrate anti-racism into the curriculum. So I think this is a particularly inopportune time to move multicultural ed department to student affairs. Very specifically, on page 52, the team suggests that it does not believe it is necessary for sessions to be evening and weekend based. Additionally, the team thinks shorter sessions will improve impact and allow greater audience from a wider audience. I do ask what evidence that the team had in making those recommendations. What experts in anti-racism and multicultural training contributed to this report such that this kind of plan would be made. Every workshop that we give that takes place during the college school year is over full. And so I'm not quite sure why you think changing them in this particular way, making sessions shorter when most of our attendants say that they need more time to work on these issues, would be a good idea. Finally, that conducting this workshop would be the core function of the Multicultural Education Department. I'm very surprised that that would be a recommendation coming out of this committee, because most colleges that have multicultural education departments do not support these kinds of trainings. They already have more than a full-time job without conducting these trainings. So I urge you to come talk to the team of facilitators as you move forward with this recommendation. Thank you.
My name is Tim Linden. I'm a teacher in the music department, and I want to talk about the early college portion of the report. In the music department, we don't have that many early college students, so I'm not speaking about personal interest in maintaining early college students. I did have a daughter that came through the program, and so I know personally what the program means. I think it's a great idea that we discuss with the Guilford County Schools about whether we're really being reimbursed enough for what we do. But I think to eliminate the early college program, I'm not sure what it would save the college. If we had 100 full-paying traditional aid students, I understand that, but we would not have 100 traditional aid students full-paying. So I would think seriously about negotiation, which is great, but what kind of loss it would be, both for Guilford College to lose that young student body, and for many of the departments who have an immense number of early college students in their program, physics, political science, there are many. Thank you.
founding member of the Art Gallery Advisory Committee that founded, planned, and implemented the Art Gallery operation back in the mid-1980s. I also want to just touch base on Friends Center, Bonner Scholars, Multicultural Education, Art Gallery. In my opinion, this is the heart of this college. Everything else is sort of ancillary. I wanted to say that besides the art classes that use the gallery, history, IDS, educational studies, geology, FYE, religious studies, women's studies, these have all been documented in that very thorough report that your committee praised. Economics. Coming from the director. Economics as well. And economics, thank you. Therefore, I find the conclusions that the direct impact on the art gallery programming on students being minimal and ancillary to Guilford's primary mission of teaching and learning do not reflect the data that was submitted and are therefore incorrect. In the administrative assessment report submitted to APSA, attendance figures to the main gallery exhibitions were cited as being between 2,000 and 10,000 each and every year. That's hard data, even with that range. For the Patrick Dowry Sculpture Project alone, and this was in the report submitted to your group, at least 150,000 people were directly impacted by those events of that exhibition and events that happened over the course of that year and a half, 150,000. I also want to mention the Stephen Hayes exhibition, Cash Crop. Life-size sculptures of enslaved African Americans became the flashpoint of last spring's Understanding Racism workshop, where the tears and rage over the poisonous evils of slavery and oppression could find concrete outlet for expression from participants. Therefore, any conclusions based on restructuring would, to me, be unwise and not based on research presented, and perhaps undermine what I see as the core of this institution. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Teresa Rodriguez. I'm a sophomore here. I've come to speak on the part of the MND. I believe in your report you stated that the department is doing this. They're doing some things right in keeping the students of color, maintaining them. They're doing everything right, not just some things, because as a student of color, I would not have stayed this year had it not been for the support in the MND and the services that they provide on campus. So to say that the only thing that should come out of the MND is the Understanding Racism workshop is a bit misguided, because the Understanding Racism workshop is 1/10 of what they do to support students on campus of color and not of color. So before we make the panel, whoever makes those assumptions based on data, which I would love to see, may we please make sure that data is correct and ask students of all color. If we're going to ask students of color who stay, ask them why do they stay. And if the MD and the support of Jada, Drew, Jorge, and Parker is not on that list, I really don't know what data you're looking at. Thank you.
I would ask, with respect to the spirit of the meeting, that you not applaud, that you not cheer. Quicker hands great. But I think we want to try and keep this in the spirit of problem solving, respect, and solutions.
Jorge Ceballos, co-director of the Multicultural Education Department. And I have a couple of concerns regarding the recommendations. One of them is the framing of the diversity plan as the blueprint that steers the resources and activities of this department. As far as I understand, it's an institutional diversity plan, it's not a multicultural education department plan. So to simply see that plan as solely applying to our department and what we do and the resources that we have in the department, I think is a misplacement of what the plan is supposed to be. The transformation of the institution requires everyone's participation, not just the multicultural education department. The other point here is the comparison of FTEs to peer institutions and aspirant institutions. And also putting that in the context of the history of the staffing in the department, that not too long ago had 3 full-time staff people as well as 2 part-time people, serving different groups of students that at this point we are not serving, for example, Native Americans. So to make a recommendation, to make the observation that in comparison to other institutions that may not have the same number of students of color or LGBTQ students as we have here, and to say that 2 FTEs is an adequate level of staffing, while at the same time asking for the department to take on the understanding races and marches at the core function seems to be a very contradictory statement. The last thing is, I think there's probably a lack of understanding of the amount of work that it takes to prepare for these workshops, and we've already gone through an expansion since the report was submitted to APSA to create a level 1 and a level 2 workshop, which is creating an increased number of opportunities for our whole community to participate. So we have 3 workshops this semester, 3 workshops next semester. So I think there's a critical lack of understanding of the amount of preparation, time, and dedication that it takes to put these workshops in place, which is not reflected in what we recommend in this report. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ruby Rickenbach. I'm a student. My concern has to do with quantitative versus qualitative as well. From what people have said already, they've raised statistics that go against what's in the report. And it's worrisome to me that quantitative would be incorrect when qualitative is even harder to gather. And I'm interested in knowing more about how you collect qualitative data. As somebody on campus who is involved with a lot of different people and has worked through different programs, but unofficially, I feel like it's hard to take into account the work that people who are unofficially involved do. And also the programs that are proposed to be eliminated, like the CRRC. I'm not only concerned with that idea, but also where they would be redirected to. As this weekend I witnessed or heard about 4 fights on campus. Or was one of them I was directly involved with, or was affected by. And so that is something that I want to know where I go to if the CRC is eliminated. And with the Bomber Center, I've done volunteering there, but I'm not a bomber. And so with cuts there, I guess, how do you propose to take into account the far-reaching effects of these programs as they've very personally affected my life, and I believe they've affected a lot of people that have not been taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Andy Cumore. I'm a first-year student here, part of the QLSP program. And I had a question. In the report, you referred a lot to colleges that we're either equivalent with or aspire to be like. And given all the comments today about the spirit of Guilford and things like the Bonner program and the Art Gallery, which are an integral part of our community and the liberal arts. I mean, one of the great things about liberal arts schools is they're all very unique and they develop their own unique communities. So I wonder why that you focus so much on comparing to other colleges, and as far as I read, made very little reference to the spirit of our community. And I'm just wondering why you made that decision to analyze it in that way.
Jada Drew, and I'm standing here first as an alum of Guilford. I'm a 2007 graduate. I'm also a Bonner alum, and lastly, I'm the director of the Multicultural Education Department. I have a few concerns about the Bonner Center and actually cutting a staff person. The Bonner Center doesn't just serve Bonner students, which are 60 students here at Guilford, 55 to 60. The Bonner Center is a hub of experiential learning. In the SLRP plan, the SLRP 2 plan, there's a full committee working toward experiential learning. So to one, move Bonner out of the academic affairs office to student affairs, it takes away the co-curricular high impact that the Bonner Center is doing, and also taking away the staff person. Right now, they're already overworked. I see that on a regular basis. As a Bonner student, I saw it on a regular basis. So I think there's a way to really tap into fundraising, the advancement office, even our alum. There are tons of Bonner alum that will be willing to help you find ways to not cut a staff person, but to actually fundraise. As far as the Multicultural Education Department is concerned, like Jorge mentioned, the Understanding Racism Workshop and the Diversity Plan should not be fully focused in the Multicultural Education Department. The Understanding Racism Initiative, creating a multicultural campus, is not a charge just out of our department. Historically, our department was created to serve underrepresented students, marginalized students, and not to transform Guilford College. However, because of the need, that's what we have been doing. We have been leading that charge, but we cannot do it with only 2 fully staffed people. In the past, we've had at least 4 staff people in our department, and now we only have 2.5. As far as the art gallery, I also think that should not be cut. There's so many programs that come out of the art department, of the art gallery, that we take our students to. Cash Park was one of them, not just our students out of the Multicultural Education Department and the Bonner Center, but we've brought over 100 high school students and community leaders to campus in just that 1 year. So I really hope that you think about other ways to fundraise before we decide to cut positions. Recently, the Black Alumni Advisory Board has been established here at Guilford, and these are folks who are ready and willing to help fundraise, to help with admissions, to bring more money into the college instead of taking the core, our people, out of Guilford College. Thanks.
My name is Mark Justin. I'm the director for the Center for Principal Problem Solving and adjunct faculty member in the Department of Religious Studies. I want to thank the committee in terms of its section on the center, in terms of reaffirming the centrality of principal problem solving and re-articulating the goals of advancing faculty, student, and staff involvement. That's very helpful. I'm somewhat uncomfortable in this position of having the feeling that I have to defend the center and our efforts because the data that was presented in our report, the numbers, the descriptions, simply were not used in the assessment that's published in the report. So I have a question as to how the committee decided to focus on the things that it did focus on and why it picked certain data and didn't use other data.
I want to take that question as a question right now.
If there's somebody who will answer it, sure.
Can someone from the panel respond to that?
Yeah, and that makes more sense because they may want to look at the actual report that was submitted, that we submitted.
Okay, so why don't we make that as a request to revisit the data that was in the original report?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
2 more quick things. One is the report also draws a direct comparison between staff time in the center and how it's spent, and staff time in the Bonner Center and in the Multicultural Education Department. I would also like to know what document or assessment was used by the committee to draw those equivalencies, because the programs and centers are not the same, and people were hired for very different reasons. But the impression given by the report is that the staff in our center is doing much less than staff in these other programs. That's the defensive part of what I have. The final thing is that the report leaves the impression that the center does not have in place leadership adequate for developing and advancing its academic agenda. I would simply like to refute that and ask the committee to upon subsequent reflection, to explain the nature of that comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
talking about with friends at the very beginning of this forum. I'm a member of QLSP. I've been working this week, I'm actually working to write a minute that QLSP will approve this Friday. So I've been trying to be in touch with the whole QLSP community about how they feel about especially the Friend Center recommendations. And I'd like to just point out 3 things. First, I'm a sophomore, and even though I've only been here for a year, Frank has I can say that he has completely changed my life. And I know a lot of people who feel the same way. So I take issue with the idea that we could function just as well with one less staff person. I also would like to take issue with the idea that off-campus programming doesn't enrich student lives as much as on-campus programming does. I personally have benefited a lot from our partnerships with local meetings, and I know a lot of people in QLSP who have really benefited from work trips over fall break. And lastly, I just want to reiterate what Max was saying, that Guilford doesn't actually pay Frank's salary. So the recommendation, as I understand it, would essentially prevent Friend Center from paying Frank to work here, which seems unreasonable and detrimental to student experiences to me. Thank you.
And space my mind.
My name is Donovan. I'm a second year, and I would like to pose a question to the panel. I feel like the reason why we as students and we as a community came in here with a lot of passion is because we feel like what the expectation that we came in with and being part of the Guild community is that the core liberal arts education is being undercut by the recommendations made by these committees. And my question is why you were choosing to focus on, if I may say it boldly, eliminating or cutting programs like Bonner, programs like multicultural education, and the Friend Center, and why other parts of the school, other programs of the school, such as athletics, are being maintained and are not having the same critical view that you're assessing what I mentioned before.
My name is Betty King, and I'm a faculty member, and I haven't heard this said yet, and I do want to say it. I have heard that a lot of us appreciate the work that your committee has done. I just want to say that over and over and over again, because this was a very tough task. I think people have made some very good points, and I appreciate how respectfully you all have listened and how respectfully you will consider those. What concerns me is that this institution has some really tough years ahead financially. Tougher than what we're going through right now, I think. And so, as I look at all of this, I want to say that your committee is in a very difficult situation, as is the budget committee, because there are going to have to be some major structural changes and some things that are going to be eliminated. And I know that you're trying to hold the things that are close to the mission of the college close. So I appreciate that. I'm just saying that I look into the future with trepidation about how we're going to remain financially viable.
My name is John Madden. I'm a second-year student here, and I believe I'm representing both the student body and the greater Guilford College community. When I say thank you for taking this time, taking these past 2.5 years to deliberate and try and make our institution a more progressive and sustainable institution for the future. That's a big part of our college's mission statement. And so I just want to take that time to acknowledge you guys and the work that you've done in meeting what I believe is once a week for however long. Maybe that was not so good, but I also want to state that I feel personally as an active member of the community that my values are not very well represented in this report. I feel it reads boldly that so many people here so many students showed up to represent that we have a voice and that we want to speak out, and we want to do so in the most efficient manner possible. So many people I've talked to have not been able to come here today, so I just want you guys to acknowledge that we are concerned members of this.
You've heard it from a number of people today, the different programs, and I'm sure countless people in this room could regurgitate those programs and why they feel that those are vital programs to them. They're the reason, Bonner is the reason I'm here. Bonner is the reason we had multiple students from the Caribbean as in our first year, and if that's not a testament to diversity, I don't know what is. I feel that though there are other resources and departments that highlight these core values, I feel that the programs that are under scrutiny are some of the loudest and some of the most vibrant departments here at campus. And lastly, I just want to attest to the work that has been done by the student body, at least that I've seen. We got knowledge of this report last Friday, this 116-page report that you guys know how long it is. You're the ones that typed it up. I've seen so many students up till 4 in the morning reading this report, diagramming, picking out what's important to them, emailing hundreds and hundreds of students, of faculty members, setting up meetings, sacrificing their time, sacrificing sleep and meals. And although we might not have all of the quantitative data, we might not know when the core values were installed in Guilford, we know that they are one strong piece of Guilford College's mission statement that we feel is not being acknowledged. So I just wanted to attest to the students that even though they might not have all the quantitative data we need, should have, and deserve, that the qualitative data that they're speaking out speaks just as loudly as those numbers in a lot of cases. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Monica Jones. I'm a CCE student and a part of this Student Government Association. And on behalf of our department, we're asking, we can appreciate the open forum at this time of the day. Is there any intention on any public forum for the majority of our student body that is it now at this time of work? And is there going to be, or has there been any intent for us to have any input into this 2-year process?
Hi, I'm Helen Rivera-Mladenovic. I'd like to think that some of you might know me now by the work that I do with the Bonner program and with other programs on this campus. And I think that you are grossly, by looking at everything with these budget cuts, and I know that $2 million is a lot to get cut, but I'm an expert because I'm going to be grossly in debt by the time I leave this institution. And it's not even like a number I can comprehend as a 21-year-old senior. And I just want to say I appreciate you, but also come to our events. I haven't seen many of your faces at the things we do. If you want numbers, and I'm not trying to be cutting out passion, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I'm human. And so I'm going to leave this part in here, this emotion in here. Last September 18th, we had less than 20 people in less than 2.5 hours pack 10,261 meals for Stop Hunger Now, which is a program that cost $2,500 to bring to this campus, which alone told us that they wanted for homecoming. Was not communicated back to us that they were going to help promote it to anything. So the communication that we're putting out there, that I've seen my staff putting out there for me, is not represented in these budget cuts and in these recommendations. I also want to say that as far as numbers go, all I have is my own to look at. I had a best friend who graduated last year. Her name is Katie Maloney. She had a great impact on this community. And in the past year and a half, Katie and I have built, and Chelsea Wilson, if you recall, who graduated last year as well as a Hunger Fellow, we have built 5 community service sites in the past year and a half. At Guilford College campus, we had about 40 students working for us last semester in all of those sites that are not just Bonner, they're not multicultural education, but are just students trying to figure out job skills and how to do it without sitting at a desk doing grading papers or doing something like plugging in numbers. And I just want to say, Katie was a member of QLSP in Bonner, and I was a member, I got this Hunger Fellowship, which was a blessing, but it's $4,000 compared to what Bonner can give students. Katie graduated last year with about $9,000 worth of debt. I'm graduating with about $50,000.
My name is Kieran Colby. I'm a sophomore and I'm a member of the Quaker Leadership Scholars Program, and I'd like to voice a concern about the lack of student representation on this committee. I know Caleb served on the committee for 2 years, but Caleb was my RA last year, and I had no idea that he was serving on this committee and that they were seeking out input from the community in this whole process. And I also feel that it's unreasonable to ask one student, particularly someone who I know was as busy as Caleb with work and studying for his exams and being an RA and all those things, to represent all 1,200 of our student body, and additionally everyone who's in CCE and everyone who's in early college, and to have his voice have to speak for the whole community when he doesn't have the time or the resources to really fully represent all of us. And I think it's important to note that, like, while we may not be experts in financial and budgetary reasonings, we are all very clearly passionate about the future of our school, and I don't think any one of us here today is denying the fact that there are cuts that need to be made, but I think we're all here to show support that we want to be a part of this process, and we want to be able to make sure that we want to be able to see that our future is sustainable, but also holds true to Gilbert's core values.
Jack?
Yes.
So just for clarification, the committee didn't choose the structure of the committee, so that's not going to really help us. But for Caleb's sake, I really wish he was here. I think all of us would nod and affirm his incredible contribution. He almost didn't miss meetings, and I mean, he was a fantastic aide. And I mean, I wish he was here today. We talked about it when we got on stage here today. So he put in a lot of effort.
If I could take my facilitator's glasses off for just a second.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be that as you finalize your report, you find your student to sit with you. Go ahead.
Hey there, my name is Jose. I'm a first year student, and I'm also a Bonner scholar. And what I want to say to you guys is to put a picture when you're taking decisions, and sometimes when you send an email, you need a picture of who you're sending the email to. So this time I'm going to speak from outside Guilford and how programs as the Bonner program is affecting the students outside. First, the first time I heard about Guilford and how I got to know about Guilford was through Soil Leader, which is organized by Bonner students and from people and from regular students in Guilford College. And I don't think I would be here without Soil Leader. And Soil Leader kind of inspired and gave me instructions of how to apply to college. The second point is Bonner. Bonner has different sites in the community, and most of these programs help refugees and immigrants who have used a right to the country. And if you want to know more about that, I would say please go to Google and research about how hard it is to acculturate to a new country where people don't speak your language and all of that. We are not that thing, right? So I would say you are recommending to take off a position from the Bonner and to do other changes. And yeah, but I think Bonner is very essential in what Guilford is. And right now it's working really good. And people like James and Christine and Andrew and other people are overworked. And I think if you...
Brian Langer, and I work in the administration division, more specifically operations and facilities. I want to say thank you to the lady that spoke before me and mentioned some of the numbers in our housekeeping staff, how true that is, and that's appreciated that you brought that up. I've had, I guess I'll say it this way, the unenviable task of being part of 17 cuts that we've had in our division. None of them have been easy. They've been friends, they've been colleagues, they've been confidants in some cases that I've had to participate in telling them that they no longer have employment here. I want to commend the panel. I want to tell each one of them how much I respect them, how much I don't envy them having to set through this today or the decisions that are made. But I also want to emphasize the importance to the financial integrity and the long-term plan of Guilford College, and being here 11 years, that is important. Thank you.
Again, like it's been said enough times, I really appreciate the work you guys do.
lot of them, but they've all been spoken for. What I'm here to talk about is the manner in which this plan was shared. I'm president of the traditional student body, and I kind of saw this coming down the pipeline a little more than some people because I email administrators daily. But we raised this in Senate, which is how our students hearing about it, and almost every student was hearing about it from a friend. And I think that, as far as I've been able to investigate from my point of view, it seems like it's only been advertised through the Beacon, which is not a commonly student-led thing. I didn't see any buzz posts. I'm layout editor of the Guilfordian, and we didn't get a request to put an ad for this, and I feel like it could have been better advertised. It's really unfortunate that students are hearing about this the day of, and I think there are a lot more avenues in which students can be reached about this plan. This is a big thing that affects us and it feels like something. More steps should have been taken, and I think we can work together to advertise this better. I think clearly there might need to be more time. I think no matter what happens going forward, I think communication needs to be a little more transparent. Thank you.